journey through Lent. Today is our second day, and we are in Mark still, chapter 1, verses 21 through 39. Now, one more thing. I don't know if you were able to be with us yesterday for our Ash Wednesday service, but if not, I want to encourage you to go ahead and look at that Ash Wednesday service, watch it at some point. It was such a moving and meaningful experience, and you can see it either on the Facebook page if you're watching us here, or you can also see it archived over at YouTube. So take some time, sit down, watch it, and I know that it will be a spiritually centering practice and experience for you. Well, I also want to encourage you to read along with us as we journey through these 40 days of Lent. We're reading through the Gospel of Mark. As we spoke yesterday, gospel is simply a word that means God talk or good news. And so we're going to spend these 40 days reading through the book of Mark, which is hopefully going to be good news for your soul and for your spirit as we journey towards Easter Sunday and journey towards Lent. And so thankful that you're joining us on that experience. And if you want to download the entire reading plan, there is a link that is attached to this post. And so make sure to download that PDF so that you can be a part of us, so that you can be a part of it with us each and every step of the way. But I want to jump right into today's reading because I have something special that I want to show you as a part of what we're going to be doing today. So Mark chapter 1, verse 21. Jesus and his companions went to the town of Capernaum. When the Sabbath day came, he went into the synagogue and he began to teach. The people were amazed at his teaching, for he taught with real authority, quite unlike the teachers of the religious law. So what we have here is a bit of a backhanded compliment as he says that as he's writing this, that really Jesus' teaching was not like anyone else's because they didn't teach with any real authority, which to me means that what they were teaching wasn't really from the mouth of God. And so when Jesus comes on the scene and Jesus starts teaching, people immediately notice and recognize that it is teaching that is coming from someplace else than the religious teachers and leaders that they have been listening to. It's coming from God. And so they recognize this, and it is a special and important thing for them because they realize that they don't realize that they're literally hearing from God, that Jesus is God. But what they do realize is that for some reason or other, what they're hearing out of Jesus' mouth feels as though it's coming from God himself. There's an authority to it. And that is something that we even recognize today. That's something that we even hear and see today. Whenever you recognize a teacher or a preacher or a leader speaking differently, you can tell that feeling. You recognize that feeling whenever you sense that whatever this person is saying or teaching, this isn't really coming from them to you, but this is coming from God, that they're kind of a conduit between God and you. The people in Jesus' day had not experienced that, it would seem, until Jesus comes on the scene. Now, the other thing that I want you to see here is the city of Capernaum. Now, a couple of years ago, I had the opportunity to go to Israel. If you ever have the opportunity to go to Israel, I would say there is no price that you should not pay to go to Israel. What it will do for your faith, for your belief, and for your understanding of Scripture is priceless. And so if you ever get the chance to go, I want to encourage you to go. And a couple of years ago, I did. And one of my favorite places there is this town, this village that's being spoken of here, where the center of all the action is in today's reading, Capernaum. So I brought along a picture of the city of Capernaum. And you can see in the background the Sea of Galilee and so many of the stories that we have in the Gospels of Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John. In fact, almost all of them take place around or on that body of water. The Sermon on the Mount took place on a hilly slope, almost just like the green one that you can see back in the back. The story that Jesus tells about the legions of demons being cast into the pigs, and then the pigs throwing themselves over a cliff and then diving into the water takes place on a cliff just like one of the ones that you can see there on the back on the other side of the Sea of Galilee. And then, imagine Jesus feeding the 5,000 on the banks of the Sea of Galilee. Imagine the disciples out on the middle of the boat on that sea and a storm coming up and Jesus being asleep in the bottom of the boat. Imagine Jesus walking on that water. Just an amazing location. And Capernaum, right here at the very closest edge to us, so the Sea of Galilee, was just a tiny fishing village. And you might remember in yesterday's reading that Jesus calls Simon and Andrew, who were brothers, and then James and John, who were brothers, from this village of Capernaum. This is where they lived and fished and where their lives were centered. And so what we see in this picture, I want to point out a few things to you. We just read a few moments ago in the verses that Jesus goes into the town of Capernaum and begins teaching in the synagogue. Well, that's this very building right here that's been excavated. Now, Capernaum isn't a living city anymore. People don't live in the city of Capernaum. So this is simply an archaeological site that has been discovered and dug out. And so here is the synagogue. Now, obviously, it's been destroyed, and this is not the first time that this synagogue has been destroyed. So the walls that we see here in the synagogue of Capernaum were not the walls of the synagogue that Jesus is teaching in here today, but the foundation is the same, and you can even see on the borders the foundation that is original, that would have been the synagogue foundation in which Jesus spoke. And so the walls that you're seeing would be walls that would be built upon in the same general places, but it wouldn't have been the synagogue walls that were there when Jesus was speaking there. But the foundation and location, exactly the same. Now, this other odd-looking octagonal building that you see over here a little further to the left, this is Peter's house. Now, that was clearly not the house that was there whenever Peter was living there. That is actually a chapel that is built on stilts about 10 feet in the air above Peter's house. So right below that building is the dig where Peter's house was. And they have very strong reason to believe that that is the location where Peter's house was, where his family lived. And you can walk underneath there under that chapel, and it's an amazing experience to see it right there on the seashore of Galilee. Now, all of these other little things that look like just rubble on the ground around Peter's house and around the synagogue aren't rubble. Those are foundation walls for all of the houses. And so you can see that they were small in nature, but definitely livable. And there were a lot of them, and you see them all there in the forefront of the picture. And even in between Peter's house and the synagogue, you see more walls for houses. And then even on the other side of the synagogue to the right, you can see over there walls, which would have meant houses as well. So this was a rather significant sized village during Jesus' time. And so with that lay of the land, why don't we go back to the text and read the rest of the story. So Jesus has been preaching in the synagogue, and I've skipped a few verses here. You can go back and read them. After Jesus leaves the synagogue, though, verse 29, with James and John, they went to Simon and Andrew's home. And so now that you have the lay of the land, as it were, in mind, you can see that it really was just a hop, skip, and a jump from the synagogue over to Peter's place. And Simon's mother-in-law was sick in bed with a high fever, and they told Jesus about her right away. Now, it doesn't say that Peter told Jesus that she was sick right away. I mean, it is his mother-in-law, but maybe James and John, spilled the beans, and Peter's like, oh, come on, did you have to tell Jesus? It could have been that she wouldn't be with us anymore. I don't know. I'm sure Peter loved his mother-in-law. But either way, Jesus finds out about it. So he goes to her bedside, and he takes her by the hand, and he helps her sit up. And then the fever left her. And she gets up and prepares a meal for them, which means she really was well and had been healed. And so that evening, after sunset, many sick and demon-possessed people were brought to Jesus. You think? Now that word has gotten around in this village that Peter's mother-in-law is healed, everybody wants their healing or their family member healed as well. And you can see how close people lived in that village of Capernaum. And so if one person knew something or something happened in one person's house, everybody knew about it within the space of an hour or two. small town life. And so the whole town gathers at the door to watch as person after person after person comes in to try to receive their healing from Jesus. So Jesus healed many people who were sick with various diseases, it says, and he cast out many demons. But because the demons knew who he was, he did not allow them to speak as of yet. Before daybreak the next morning, though, Jesus got up and went out to an isolated place to pray. And you're going to see Jesus doing this regularly, that in order for him to be able to disconnect, in order for him to be able to connect with his Father, with God, he has to disconnect from people around him. And this pattern isn't going to end, where people are constantly coming to Jesus, bringing people to Jesus, looking for something from Jesus. He can't get a moment alone or a moment to himself to do anything, even pray. In fact, that's what we see next. Verse 36, Simon and the others go out to find him. What are you doing out here, Jesus? Where are you? We don't have time for prayer. We have ministry to do. We have actual things to accomplish here. And so when they found him, they say, everyone is looking for you, which thus implies that your prayer, your Bible study, that kind of stuff that you're doing, don't worry about that. People need you. This ministry is growing. We are on the crest of an amazing wave here. What are you spending time doing this for, Jesus? You need to be spending time with people. If we're ever going to make a go of this thing, you're going to have to give 150%, Jesus. Come on. Come on. There are still people who have their healing that's needed. There are still people who have that demon that needs to be cast out of them. Jesus replies, Capernaum can't keep me. They can't tie me down here. We must go on to other towns as well, and I will preach to them too. It's why I came. I understand what you're saying, but we're not going to be able to just simply stop and help everyone. This message has to get around. I have a plan. I have things that I have to do. So Jesus traveled throughout the region of Galilee, preaching in the synagogues and casting out the demons. And so he is on the go. And this is what we are going to see as we continue through the book of Mark. We're going to see a book that is full of urgency, where things happen immediately, like a pinball machine. Jesus is here, and then Jesus is there, and then Jesus is here, and then ping, 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 just to the next, to the next, to the next, to the next. Matthew isn't quite written that way. Luke, John, not really written that way. They're trying to accomplish other things. Mark, though, what Mark is mostly trying to accomplish is a sense that Jesus was really doing something. And in fact, Mark was the first gospel that was written. And so we might even be able to say that Mark's is the freshest account of what happened. And what we feel in Mark's account is an urgency. And what we see here is a primary theme in Mark's gospel, and I've written this out for you here, is really a readiness to follow Jesus, that people seem to be ready to follow Jesus. They're ready to hear this message. They're ready to receive this message. They're ready to follow him wherever he goes. And so things move quickly because of that readiness, because Jesus essentially, with his message, pours gasoline on a fire that has already begun to smolder and burn inside of them. Where are you? Is there an urgency? Is there a fire that's maybe beginning to spark inside of you? Maybe the kindling of your heart is ready to receive Jesus. And all that's going to take is just a little bit of the gospel, a little bit of the good news, a little bit of Jesus Christ for you to become a raging, burning flame on fire in your life. The book of Mark is going to give you that. And so I want to encourage you, don't discount the power of spending these next 40 days journeying with Jesus through the book of Mark and with us. You're ready. You're ready for this. Let's go follow Jesus together. It's been good to be with you today. Looking forward to being back with you tomorrow for the next day as we journey on day 3 with Jesus. But until that time, Happy reading.